All right, so is everybody here for the algebra class? It's supposed to help me because this is the third presentation I'm doing in this room. So if you were here for the last one, thanks for staying. If you're here for the first one, welcome back. So to introduce myself, if you haven't been here, I am Beagle Bourgault and I work for VSAC. I direct the Talent Search Program, which is one of several grant-funded federal programs that works around the state to counsel people about their plans after high school. So I've been working for VSAC for a bunch of years, and we are here to talk about scholarships. So the last session, we talked about financial aid overall, the big picture of paying for college. Scholarships is one piece of that. So if you want information about the whole process, there are a couple of ways to get that. You can go to our website, bunch of resources on there. There are actually some handouts still on the table, can give you more of the big picture. And also, we are doing presentations at a lot of high schools this spring. They're typically aimed at juniors or sophomores even, and their families, where we review the overall process, very similar to the last presentation we just did. So if you weren't here for that, consider attending one of those if it's available at your high school or one that's near you. Or you can just look on our website. Like I said, there's lots and lots of info on there. However, scholarships is one piece of the overall financial aid process, so we're going to talk about that. Any student who's applying for scholarships should be applying for financial aid overall. There's a lot more funding out there than just scholarships, but like I said, we're going to focus on just this today. All right, so what we're going to talk about is 3 things you can do to be successful when you're looking for scholarships, 4 steps in the search for scholarships, and then some other things to consider so students can be successful. All right, so what is a scholarship? How many people here have heard of a scholarship? Right, that's why you're here, right? You want to know, like, oh, tell me more. So a scholarship is money that a student gets to pay for school after high school. So pay for college or other training programs. Students do not have to pay this back, and it can be used to pay for whatever those costs are. There are a lot of different kinds of scholarships that can be used in different ways, and there are different ways to get them, and that's what we're going to cover. So scholarships come in a variety of forms. The thing that's the same is that here's some money, you don't have to pay it back, and you use it to pay for school. That's great. However, how students get those can really vary. Typically, a student has to apply. There's some kind of application process. It could be very early. It could be very long. It could be very short. It could be require an essay or a transcript. It could require financial information. Lots and lots of things might be required. Every scholarship is different, so keep that in mind. And know that for most students, scholarships are not something that you're going to get to cover the cost. College is really expensive, even at the schools that are the least expensive. So it's rare that a student is going to get so many scholarships or a big enough scholarship that it covers everything. That can happen. And if a student is eligible for that and applies for it and gets it, that's what we're talking about. But most scholarships are fairly small. Students are adding them up. They're using it in conjunction with other types of aid. They might get a scholarship, but still need a loan. So just be aware, when we're talking scholarships, for most students, it's not like I am the athlete and I go and I get a full ride. Even those athletic scholarships are very rarely a full ride. So it's often not going to cover everything. All right, so one other thing to be aware of in terms of the role it plays in paying for college is that colleges are going to look at all of the different types of aid you get. Maybe you get a state grant, maybe you have a loan, whatever it might be. Maybe they give you some money of their own that's based on financial need. They're going to look at a scholarship and they might treat it in different ways. They might say, great, you have a gap, some money left over, we'll just tack it on here. Some schools are really great about giving out aid, and they say, we're going to give out money, and whatever you need, we're going to give it to you. We're going to do the calculation, and you need this much, we're going to give it to you. And then you get a scholarship, and they're like, yeah, but we already gave you everything that you need, so we're just going to reduce that amount that we give you. Now, most schools are not going to do that. Most schools are just going to add it on, but be aware that that can happen. Some schools might reduce other aid that they've given if you get an outside scholarship. This outside meaning not from the school itself. All right, so let's dive in a little bit more here. Some common myths people have about scholarships. 1, my grades aren't good enough. Some scholarships indeed are based on grades. How well do you do academically? You apply for a scholarship and they're going to say, we only want students who have a 3.5 GPA or whatever they're looking for. You have to be, successful academically. It doesn't necessarily apply to every scholarship though. So it might be a factor, but it might not be. So you might not have the best grades. It doesn't mean you're not going to be eligible for scholarship. Parent makes too much money. Some scholarships indeed are based on a family's financial circumstances, but some are not. So I don't know if you've heard about the, what's it called? Stuck at Prom scholarship. Anybody heard of this one? It's put on by the duct tape company. And it's like the scholarship is you make your prom outfit out of only duct tape. And then you send in photos and they judge it. And like you get this big scholarship based on how good your prom dress is, or a tux, or all these different categories. So like that is clearly not based on academics. It is not based on your family's financial need. It's based on something completely different. There are other scholarships like that. It's just kind of a fun example. I'm not athletic. Again, scholarships might be based on all kinds of things. Yes, there are athletic scholarships, but that's only one kind. And then I haven't chosen a major yet. So some scholarships, yes, indeed, they say, we want to give money to students who are studying nursing or engineering or going into environmental science or whatever it might be, but that's only some of them, not all of them. The thing about scholarships is someone has some money and they say, I want to give it to these students. And they might say, I want to give it to young women who have financial need and who are going into the sciences. And someone else might say, we have some money and we want to give it to people who live in Barton, Vermont. That's it. So it just depends on who has the money and what their criteria are. So yes, all these things might be factors, but not necessarily. Okay, so 3 things you can do if you want to be successful in getting scholarships. 1, understand that communication around scholarships is very different than other types of financial aid. So Vermont has a grant program, the Vermont State Grant. Student can apply for that. If they apply and there's something missing, they will get an email that says, hey, thanks for applying. We see that you're missing some information. Please log into your account, fill this out. If you don't do that, they will send you another message. Hey, you still haven't done this. If you want to get the grant, please fill it out. If you get the grant, they will say, log into your account, see how much it is. With scholarships, there are all these different criteria. Maybe it requires an essay. Maybe you have to fill out a form online. No one is going to say to you, oh, you didn't do this right, or you missed the deadline. They're not going to do that. It is a competitive process. So a scholarship organization will tell you, yes, we received your application. And they will tell you, if you ask, oh, no, you didn't get it. They'll definitely tell you if you did get it. But they're not going to reach out to you. It's your responsibility to communicate with the scholarship organization. You have to do all of the work, basically, because it's a competitive process.
So also, like, it's going to look different for everyone. If you're like an adult but a first-year college student, you can still apply for a lot of these scholarships. And also, if you're an independent of the state and you're not necessarily under one of your parents, like, you also can apply for a lot of scholarships and can get more funding. That's what I did, and my first full year was covered. And then my third full year this year was covered. I've only had to take out a few loans for my sophomore year. And that helped immensely. So look into all of those things because outcomes are different for everyone.
Since I did not introduce Rose, so she's the one who can hand you the microphone if you have a question. She also is a current student at Vermont State. So she has some excellent experience as a student right now. So if you have questions that might pertain to a current student, you might have the answer to. So, all right, so communication, we covered that. Next piece is eligibility requirements. So like I said, there could be a variety. So Rose's examples are good. Like some scholarships say you have to be a high school student to apply. Some will say, oh no, that's fine. If you're already in college, you can still apply for it. Some say you have to be in college. So it can vary quite a bit. Some say you have to be an adult student even. You can't be a high school student right now. So all of those eligibility requirements, it's important to find out what they are for every scholarship.
A lot of them just say you have to have a high school diploma or GED. So that's where it applies to if you're an adult starting college and it's going to be your freshman year. you can still apply.
So the key thing to know is that like all of these eligibility requirements, they vary scholarship to scholarship. So if you're looking at scholarships, you have to find out for this particular one, how am I eligible? And you go down the list and it says you have to be a Vermont resident. Great. And then it will say you have to have attended high school in one of the following towns. And you're like, oh, I didn't. Skip it. You're not going to be eligible. If you come across one of those criteria and you're just simply not eligible, you have to be studying nursing and you're like, does music count? No, it doesn't. Don't apply for that scholarship. You're not going to get it. So be very good about knowing what the eligibility requirements are. And then finally, again, it is a competition. You are competing against other students. So there might be a scholarship like the Coca-Cola scholarship. It's a great scholarship. They will give you a big fat chunk of money, but everybody in the country who's in high school can apply for the scholarship. There is a lot of competition for that.
Well, to add on, so basically, I was telling people, go to your banks, ask your banks what scholarships they're offering for students, because you don't have to pay those back. They also have forgivable loans they can also offer to students depending on the circumstances. Go to companies like Costco, Sam's Club. Like there's so many franchise companies that you can apply for scholarships through.
Oh, that's good. All right. So in terms of the timeline, most scholarships students apply for when they're a senior. That's not true for all of them. Some of them deadlines might be during junior year. There are a few scholarships that are very competitive or it's a long process. So if you look as a junior for what scholarships you might be eligible for, you might find some where the deadline is during junior year or just early in your senior year. So if you do the research ahead of time, you can find out, oh, there's that scholarship. It's due October 1st. If you wait to even start the process, maybe it's mid-September and you realize, oh, I just don't have time. Like, I'm not going to be able to apply for that. It's way too soon. Do your homework ahead of time to find out scholarships that you might be able to apply for and what those deadlines are so you don't miss the deadlines. All right, go ahead.
Thanks. Not sure if you're going to cover this later, so apologies.
That's great.
Is there a place to find scholarships? So for example, a database, front porch forum, a binder in the guidance office. How do we know what scholarships might be a best fit?
All of those things are true. Most school counseling offices have some kind of resource for scholarships. It might be a binder. It might be some kind of bin with applications in it. It might be an online source, so students log into their account and they can see the scholarships. Some schools are great about it. Like they'll list scholarships and as they learn about them, they just keep adding them on there. They'll mark it off at the deadline's passed. Others, it's just a list and maybe that scholarship doesn't exist anymore. So it really varies by high school. And then the other thing is, yes, you can look to like any institution you work with, a bank, your employer. If a student works at McDonald's and they've been there long enough, hey, guess what? There's a scholarship a student can apply for. So it's like anything you're connected to in your community might have scholarships, even Front Porch Forum, someone might post it on there. So it's really like any source that you might have to look for, you can just always ask. So there are national databases, and I am going to cover this later, but where you can do a big search. Like FastWeb is a really popular one. There's the College Board. Lots of students already have an account. You can do a scholarship search on there. Sometimes it'll spit out scholarships and you're like, I'm so not eligible for that. Why did you put that on there? So you kind of have to weed through, but it will narrow it down. There's thousands of scholarships. It comes up with 20 and you can look through those and say, oh yeah, I can apply for that. So lots of sources. Wait, did I skip something here? Okay, so senior year. So again, there are a couple different kinds of scholarships. One comes directly from the school. Again, you apply for admission. Sometimes that is your application for a scholarship at that school. So they will say, congratulations, you're accepted, and we're going to give you the scholarship if you go here. So all you have to do is apply for admission and you're applying. Sometimes colleges have separate applications for scholarships. So there's a specific scholarship for specific students who want to go there, and you have to just dig for that. If you go to the financial aid page, it will tell you, here's what students might be eligible for. If they want to apply for these other things, they can do that here. So you have to do that research on every specific school's financial aid page. And they will have deadlines. So find out what those deadlines are. again, like you can either check in with your school counseling office or whatever resource they have, they might update it automatically. And then there is a VSAC scholarship application. There's a deadline for that. I'll show you a little bit more about that. All right, so at your college or university, I just kind of already covered this. We're jumping around. It's good, it's good. So make sure you meet those deadlines for admission, meet your deadline for applying for financial aid in general. Those aren't necessarily the same. Again, every school's admissions and financial aid site will tell you, here's the deadline for admission, here's the deadline for financial aid, meet those. And then again, if it's possible that you get a scholarship and it affects other aid you get, you want to find that out ahead of time. So you don't want to like apply for some big scholarship and you get it, and then they say, oh, actually, we're just going to reduce the aid that you're already getting. Not typical, but it can happen.
What is typical is if you have a scholarship and it covers all of your tuition, depending on what school you're at, what I've found to be typical is they'll just refund that to you, whatever is a leftover. It doesn't always happen, but it does sometimes happen. And then you can put that money into an account to use for your next school year.
That's your ideal scenario. You get so much in funding that you have some left over and you can use that to pay for expenses like books and things like that. So again, not typical, but it can happen. All right, I want to point out this VSAC scholarship booklet. We have some samples over there. This booklet is a list of scholarships students can apply for using one application. So VSAC administers this program. These are people all over the place who have a scholarship for Vermont residents. So some of these are really specific. You have to live in a certain town. You have to live in a certain county. You have to be studying in a certain field. It's the same as with other scholarships. So what happens is there's a whole list in there. Students can go through here and you'll run across the criteria. Oh, you have to live in Barton. Oh, skip it. I don't live in Barton. You have to live in Windham County. Don't live in Windham County. Oh, you have to live in Franklin County. Yes, I can apply for this one. But then it says, and you have to plan to study engineering. Dang it. Let's go to the next one. For most students, that is what happens. You go through, most of the scholarships don't apply. You find the few that do. So for every student, there's some scholarship in there that they can apply for. There's often just a few. So if there's a couple hundred in there, maybe they can find 10. It might be fewer than that. That's typical. That's typical for the scholarship process in general. There's so many scholarships out there. Most of them you just are not going to be eligible for one reason or another. It takes a lot of work. So one thing I can stress about scholarships, it takes time. You got to research them. You got to find them. You have to find out that you're eligible, what the deadline is. You have to write essays, get letters of recommendation, fill out online forms. It's not quick. It's not simple. It can very much be worth it because guess what? Most students don't do it. Most students are not going to go through the process because it takes so much time. So if you're one of the few that does, your chances of getting it are way better than, obviously they're 100% better than any of those students who didn't do it. For these VSAC scholarships, what happens is you fill out one application, you submit this, you typically have to submit 1 or 2 essays, 1 or 2 letters of recommendation, and they apply to all the scholarships that you're applying for at the same time. It's very, very helpful because it means you don't have to do 10 essays and submit them to 10 different places. You can just do one process to apply for multiple scholarships. The other thing is in the back of this booklet, there are other scholarships listed. So right now, if you have a copy of this and you look on it, it will say, the deadline was a month ago. It's too late to apply if you're a senior. However, in that back of that booklet, almost all of them, the deadline has not yet come. So it's not too late necessarily. You want to do this in your senior year. It's too early to do as a junior, but you could look through and see, I might be eligible for these. There's always going to be some new ones added. The ones in the back of the book, you can look and say, I might be eligible for that. That's the process that can be helpful to do ahead of time. But again, you might have a deadline for some and another one, it's June 1st. School's almost over and I can still apply for that scholarship. So that's what you just have to find it.
Also, sometimes they will extend the deadline, the application deadlines depending on situations. For example, like 2 summers ago, my town flooded and people lost their homes and grocery stores, and they extended for that whole area the application deadline, which won't always happen, but if you do have extenuating circumstances, it's always something you could ask about.
So this booklet is available in print and we send it to high school counseling offices. So it's available on October 1st. So around then, you could go to the counseling office and grab one. You can also go to our website and order one if you want. They're obviously not available yet because we don't print them right away. We're adding scholarships to that now and, finalizing which ones are in there. But by October, this will be available for students to look through. And then sometime in the middle of February, that application is going to be due. One thing to know about these scholarships is that about half the students who apply are automatically disqualified. They didn't meet the deadline. There are 2 essays and they only submit 1. They didn't include something that they need to include. That's historically been the case. Half of the students who apply are not eligible. So you're automatically reducing your competition just by getting everything in and doing it right. All right. So again, local sources, this is a good source of scholarships because they are often limited competition. So if you have to, go to an organization in your town, like the Rotary, or you have to be a member of the Rotary, which costs just a few dollars, like you can apply for that scholarship. There are not a lot of others doing that necessarily. Any of these local sources, often they're smaller, but there's less competition.
So places like American Legion, they might offer some. And if you have veteran status in your family, there are scholarships for that as well.
All right, Shearston, what's our end time again? I've already forgotten. Okay, I don't want to keep you here too long because this is a lot of information. 5 o'clock. That's our end time? Okay, good. Oh, we're in great shape. Okay, so again, this question was asked earlier. You can do broader searches as well. So I mentioned FastWeb, College Board, those are on here. There's some other sources on here. Raise Me's one where students can go in and get these micro scholarships. So based on things that they do throughout their high school year, take chemistry. Maybe you get a $100 scholarship at a particular school. You get a GPA of 3.0 and you can get a scholarship at a particular school. So you list all these characteristics about yourself and schools participate in this. And what they're saying is if you apply to our school, you get accepted and you decide to attend here, we will give you this money. So they're often just small, but they can really add up over time. And you can look for other bigger scholarships on there too. So that's just kind of an interesting source. The College Board, the Big Future scholarships, because so many students already have an account, it's worth looking at. If you've taken the SAT, if you've done a search through the College Board and you already have an account for that, these are scholarships that you can get just by filling out the FAFSA, completing a college application. You note in there and you're entered into a drawing for a scholarship. And some of those are really big. Some of them are small, but some of them are like $40,000. So it's worth doing because it's like you're already doing it anyway. You might as well do that. All right. So one way, again, just a different way to think about it is kind of using this target metaphor. So when you're looking at scholarships, what you want to do is apply for scholarships you're most likely to get. You can apply for that Coca-Cola scholarship. You're really unlikely to get it just because so many people are applying. But if you're applying for that one scholarship where you have to live in Sheldon, like how many high school students are there who live in Sheldon, who actually are going to continue their education, who know about the scholarship, who apply for the scholarship? There just are not that many. So look local first. Even if it's small, you're much more likely to get it. Then you can broaden it out to things like employers where, okay, there's going to be potentially more competition, things that are high school wide, statewide. So like the VSAC scholarships, you have to be a Vermont resident. So that's everybody in the state potentially. And then the broader ones like the Coca-Cola one or Costco or whatever. Like those are just much broader, a lot more competition. So think small, even if they're smaller scholarships, because you're much more likely to get it. Still, if you have the time and the energy and you're willing to do it, apply for those broader ones, because if you get it, it's good. All right, so I want to address this. Because a lot of people wonder about this, it's like, oh yeah, there are all these scholarships. How do I know it's legit? So one thing is if you do a search through some of these sites you're applying for the VSAC scholarships, know that those are generally going to be legit. Anytime someone says, you've won a prize, just give us a deposit, anything like that, where they're asking you for more that you have to give them in order to get the money, then I would be hesitant about that. So yes, it happens. And students, if you're, in this process at all, say you've taken the PSAT or something, you have started to get lots and lots and lots of emails. Those can be mixed in there. But generally, if you're doing the search and you're seeking it out, that's going to be good. If they're asking for something like money or a deposit or something like that, it seems like it's too good to be true. Well, I'd steer clear. So just know that that's possible. Those things are out there. It's really uncommon these days. All right, so to review the 4 simple steps here. 1, find them. So do your homework, look locally, look more broadly, look at the VSAC scholarship booklet, see what scholarships are out there, find which ones you might be eligible for, what you need to do to apply, and when it's due. Make sure you follow the instructions. If it says you have to send an essay, but do not put your name on it, don't put your name on it. Make sure you follow the instructions exactly as they say. So if they say we need a letter of recommendation, it has to be from a teacher. Don't get a letter of recommendation from a coach. Follow the instructions specifically, because they will eliminate you if they look at, if they get a lot of applications, they're just gonna be like, oh, well, you didn't meet the criteria, gone. And you're not gonna know that. Make sure you meet the deadline. Highly recommend for any scholarship, and this is very true for the VSAC assisted scholarships in the booklet, beat the deadline. Don't just meet the deadline. Because if you're waiting till midnight on the day it's due and you submit it and suddenly you realize there's a problem with uploading or your battery dies on your laptop, like, you're out of luck. Do it well ahead of time. So if there's a mistake or something that isn't right, or you realize you forgot something, you still have time to fix it. Beat the deadline's a recommendation, but at least meet it. And then you confirm that they got it. So if there is a way to get in touch to find out, I want to make sure you got my application, is everything complete? It's okay to ask those questions and they will tell you that. They're not going to reach out and tell you it's not incomplete, but if you ask, they will tell you. All right. Look, this is how happy you're going to be dancing like this if you are successful in this process. So a key thing to know is that, so you've done all this work, you've followed the directions, you met the deadline, got it in there. With VSAC, with these scholarship applications, you're going to find out one way or the other. You have an account online, you can log in, you can find out, was I selected, was I not selected? Other organizations will tell you if you are selected, but that's it. You don't get any word that you're not selected. So that's why it's key to make sure that whatever contact information you give them, is accurate. So if you give them an email, make sure it's an email you check and you don't miss out because you just never looked and you didn't find out. But it is typical that lots of scholarship organizations will tell people who are awarded and not tell everyone else. So if you never hear from them, it's probably because you just didn't get it. You can always get in touch with them to verify. Just want to make sure I'm not missing something and I didn't get this, and they'll tell you. All right. So key things to note. It is competitive to get scholarships. You're competing as anyone else who applies. One thing to note is that is not always a bad thing, because sometimes what happens is it will say it's based on academic merit. Maybe that's one of the criteria. Now, you apply and your grades are all right, but you're not top of the class. But everybody else who applies is the same way. So you have the best grades of all the people who actually applied. So even though it says something like that, like the two big ones are academic merit and financial need, you're like, I don't have financial need, or I'm not really a great student, apply anyway. Because you're just competing against everyone else who applies and you never know who else is applying. So sometimes it's to your benefit when it's competitive. Again, when you're searching, start local, go global, and be aware of the effect that scholarships might have on other aid. Kind of covered all that. So some resources here. There's a scholarships page on our website and the College and Career Pathways site, which is here. It's also written in all the handouts. If you go to this website, all of the handouts for every workshop are on there, plus lots of links. So if you missed something, you didn't write it down or take a picture, it's all going to be in there. There we go. We're all done. We still use Twitter, not X, apparently. I learned that today. All right, questions? Well, we got a mic for you because people online can't hear you. Thank you, Rose.
So when a scholarship is awarded, does it go directly to the college or does it go to the student to apply to the college, or are they all different? I guess I do have and then a second question was, is there an easy way to tell which schools will stack scholarships, or if they'll take away financial need that's offered? Is that more based on the needs met schools versus other schools? So those are my two questions.
Two questions? Come on.
Sorry.
So how the funds get to the student? Often they are sent directly to the school. So VSAC does that, for example. So VSAC is integrated with the grant program and so on. There's a whole system set up to verify students awarded a scholarship. Yes, they are attending. Great. We know you're attending. Money goes right to the school. For other scholarships, especially more local ones or smaller ones, they might just give a check to the student. Student doesn't even have to tell the school that they've gotten it, although the school says you should. So that's great, because then you could use it, say great, I want to buy a new laptop anyway, I got the scholarship, I'll use it for that. Or they could just send it to the school to pay for tuition. So you can kind of use it for whatever. So it depends on the scholarship. You have to, for any VSAC ones, you know it's going to go right to the school. For any outside ones, sometimes they'll tell you as part of the application process, and other times if they don't, you can just ask. I already forgot part 2. Right. So how do you tell which schools it will affect financial aid? Most schools, it's not like a perfect rule, but typically it's schools that have a lot of money and they want to give aid to students who need it, and they will meet your full need. So there are, a handful of schools out there that say we're going to meet your full need no matter what that is. And so they say our school costs $80,000. We're going to give you 70, and you got to come up with 10. You get a scholarship for 10, and they're going to say, well, you only need 70. So, now we're going to give you 60, and we'll take that other scholarship. Thank you very much. So there's no one source for that, but a general rule is that it will affect schools more if they just have more money to give out. But you can ask the financial aid office. That's the way to find it.
I have a couple of questions too. Sorry. You just talked about the demonstrated need. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I've seen that in certain colleges where they'll say, we will meet your demonstrated need. How do they figure out that demonstrated need? Is that the CCS form? Maybe I'm using the wrong acronym. So that's my first question. Yeah. So maybe do that, and then I'll ask my second.
All right. So how does the school find out about your family's need? This is what I mentioned at the beginning, apply for other financial aid and apply for scholarships. So you're not starting with scholarships. Apply for anything that's based on need or merit directly with the school first. So the school finds out about your financial circumstances because you fill out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Again, if you weren't here before, that is the federal form for any federal financial aid, or a form like the CSS profile, which is another form that some schools use. So they're collecting all of this financial information about your family specifically to determine what your need is. So they're looking at your income, they're looking at your assets, all those kinds of things. And they will say, oh, it looks like here is what you will need. Here's what our school costs. Here's the difference, and so on. So they start with that. And then if you get another scholarship, they might factor it in because of that.
And I'm assuming those are just schools with very large endowments that can do that can meet your demonstrated need.
Typically, yes.
Yeah. And then my second question is, I've just been reading a little bit about the schools, and I think maybe Vassar is one of them, that is going for zero debt for all students. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, often these are schools that have more money. And so their thought is, we're just not going to award loans. What happens is when you apply for federal aid, what often is determined is the student eligible for federal loans? Any student can get federal loans if they want them and if they have a need for them. So unless everything's covered, They're like, well, we're not going to give you a loan if everything's covered. But most students, you can get a loan if you want. So some schools have said, we're just not going to do that. Instead of awarding you a loan, we'll just gift you some money. We'll give you a scholarship or a grant so that you don't have to take a loan. Now, maybe you still need a loan anyway, because their determination of your need is not what your determination of your need is. But yeah, some schools have said that we're just not going to award loans. One other thing to be aware of, though, is like the exception in Vermont, like we're very lucky. If your income is below a certain amount if you apply to UVM, Vermont State University, or CCV, like you can go tuition free. That's not covering everything, but it means that there's a guarantee that like if your income is below a certain threshold, you don't have to pay tuition. You still have to apply for all your aid and so on. And some of that will be used to cover it. But if there's any kind of gap, they'll say, we're going to cover the rest of your tuition is covered. You might still have to pay to live on campus and so on, but that's another instance where your income can determine whether or not you get aid. Okay, so that's a lot of information. And if this is your third workshop, your head could explode, but try to hold it in. It's cold outside, so that'll keep it from happening. But again, I said this at the last one, just in general about paying for school, but you know, scholarships are doable. Key thing is students have to do the work. It's not really a parent thing. Like other financial aid, parent information is required. Parents can help out with the forms and so on. Scholarships really are a student-driven process, and students need to write the essay. They have to put in the work. It is a big fat pain. It takes so much effort to do those scholarships, especially students that work so hard to apply, and it takes so much effort and time, and you're done. You're like, yes, I'm done. And it's like, no, you're not. Now it's time to apply for scholarships. So it can totally pay off if you put in the work. I have definitely seen students who are like, I want to apply for every scholarship I can, and they get them. And you really don't have a lot to lose in some ways, because it's like, think about if you work at Subway, what are they going to pay you? $16 an hour. Okay, not too bad. But you get a scholarship for $1,000 and it takes you like 2 hours to complete the application. I mean, that's more than $16 an hour. So it's worth doing. Even if you don't get it, you apply for 10 scholarships, you only get one. The amount you're getting per hour is a whole lot more than a minimum wage job. So it's worth doing, it's doable, but it does take a lot of work.
Oh, so lastly, going back to the scam thing. So for websites that say .com and not .org, all those will ask you, like I use Scholarship Owl, they'll ask you your student's name, and they will ask you what school your student's attending, and then they'll reach out to the college to look at maybe your transcripts or ask if you have financial need and are enrolled in school. And then they'll send the money to your school. Never, and I mean never, unless it's myfafsa.gov, like do not put your social security number on those websites or your students.
Yeah, if you're not sure, you could always call VSAC. I mean, someone could help you out and say, just like, I'm not really sure, I just want to check on this. Someone will help you out.
So your bank, they'll already have that information, most likely, or you can give it to them in person. So if you ever get like a weird email from one of them saying they need your social security, don't. Yeah.
All right, so we're out of time. If you have other questions, I'm gonna be sticking around for a little bit, so feel free to come on up. Otherwise, hope this day was helpful. Please remember to fill out your evaluation. Thanks for folks who joined us online, and have a great day, and good luck. You can do it.